freaking first cut. Golly.
Hello, YouTube friends. This is your DFS preview for this week's Byron Nelson. We're going to go tier by tier through the pricing and find the best plays. So make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed, and we'll jump into it right now. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman. Joining me today to talk through every single player. Not every single player. I won't make you guys do that. Sia Nejad is here. Sia, welcome in.
Thanks for having me. You want the good news or the bad news real quick?
Let's start with the bad.
The bad news is we're all going to be super frustrated Friday early evening. Want to know what the good news is?
Yeah, what's the good news?
So as of today, as of this show, pricing's really soft. We're all going to be super excited about our lineups up until Friday early evening. There you have it. Great week.
That's disappointing. Wednesday nights are always like I've already spent the money that I've won on Wednesday nights. It's Thursday mornings that usually come back to bite me.
The inevitable scroll up as you see if your guy is over par or not.
Oh boy. Greg DuCharme is here. Greg, good to have you.
Good to be here, guys. I'm really excited for this one. I know Rick he likes to start his scroll on Thursday morning at the bottom. I start at the top. I start at the top. I expect to see, Mo Norman, one of the greatest ball strikers of all time. He had this thing he did where he'd hit a ball, and no matter where it went, he'd look where he wanted it to go. And eventually over time, it would end up there. So I look at leaderboards, I look at the top, and I picture Adam Hadwin sitting right on top and all the other players sitting right on top. So, by the way, it could be a big week for the Mark Blackburn company with a big Max Homa win last week and Adam Hadwin won this week. It could be pretty good.
You could have got pretty good odds that Mo Norman would have been the first name. Go. I think you just paid off an 80-1 shot, a rich strike type of shot there, Greg.
If that's 80-1, I mean, come on, who's playing that at 80-1?
Hey. These books don't go out of business. Gentlemen, before we jump into this, let me remind the listeners, the fans, the viewers, your link for the one and done selection should be in the description right now. Go ahead. Make your vote. Get on the same page. Make sure that you guys get somebody good. You're making a lot of money. You're making everybody very nervous. Get those votes in. Tuesday morning when we go live for the preview show, that's your deadline. TPC Craig Ranch. That's where we're headed. And let's start with the field. 7 of the top 15 players in the world. Everybody using it. I hate to say a tune-up before the PGA Championship. It's such an overused phrase because there's a lot of money on the line. This is a golf course that we've seen one time. I'm actually quite excited about this.
Yeah, again, when it comes to it from a DFS standpoint, lineup construction is kind of whatever you want it to be because we have such a talented field. I mean, you go into the 10K range, you can actually grab a couple of guys and then go right down to the 7K range if that's how you want to do your roster construction. So long story short, it is super deep all the way down to, in my opinion, to the 7K range. So this is going to be a really interesting show to see who we like because that's going to lend itself to what type of roster construction we like as well. It's a really interesting week. As far as a tune-up to a major, it kind of is from a DFS standpoint.
We'll share my screen here. This is my website, RickRunGood.com. This is the key stats for the golf course. And Greg, TPC Craig Ranch, one solitary year's worth of data so we can overreact all that we would like. 25 under par was the winning score last year that broke the tournament scoring record, and this tournament's been around forever. I don't think it's going to be easy, but last year was like wet and receptive, and just like there was just no chance that they weren't going to just dominate.
Right. And I think last year I was doing a little research on what happened last year, and it seemed like there was such a clear correlation. I mean, I tweeted about it earlier, but everybody in the top 6, everybody in the top 10, except for Seamus Power, hit 54 or more greens. Yeah. Seamus Power hit 51. I mean, you had guys hitting 60 and 61 greens of regulation. So and it was an all approach fest. And you see it here. I mean, you see the 2 next to strokes gained approach on your site, Rick. It's a pretty strong correlation, but I went a little bit farther and I looked at everybody that finished T3 or better, which was 6 guys, and they all had some trend approaching the green coming in, whether their finishing positions were strong or weak, they were trending approaching the green. So I expect it to be a similar circumstance. I'm not sure if it's going to be as receptive as it was last year, but I still think we have that correlation, and there is plenty to tailgate off of what Sia was saying. There are plenty of options if you go with an approach game heavy model.
Yeah, this is from the Twitter thread that Greg put out at the Real GFD. KH Lee gained strokes in 5 of 7 events leading in on approach. Sam Burns gained in 9 of 11. Daniel Berger in 6 straight. You got to go click on Greg's name and follow him to get the rest. But yeah, it's pretty compelling stuff there, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like you don't usually see. It's no surprise that strokes gained approach ends up being important in an event. Right. But it's rare that you see this kind of strong correlation where, everybody that accomplishes something had this one thing in common going in. And that's what we're looking for now. We're not looking for what's going to be the key to success. For instance, last week, you could argue the key was putting. You have Max Homa putting great. Keegan Bradley having a great putting week. Rory has a really nice putting week. Well, it's really hard to predict who's going to have a great putting week for 1 week. But here we have this case where they not only was approach really important in the event, but they showed everybody who was in that category showed signs of success heading into the event. And that to me is what's really valuable in DFS. That's what's valuable today. That's what's valuable on Wednesday night when you're spending all the money that you've won, Rick. And come Sunday, hopefully, it's a little easier to pay off those credit card bills.
You should see the things I buy on Wednesday nights. It's absolutely sickening.
Do you get extra ads on Amazon, by the way? Do they send you extra ads on Wednesday night?
Amazon is so good at knowing exactly what I want. All the recommendations, spot on. You got me. Just add it to the cart. Buy it for me already. No problem. Sia, 1 year. So let's talk about that. What was it? Last week, we had 2 years worth of data, and it was old data. It was 2017, 2018 for TPC Potomac. Just 1 year this time around, but it was last year. Like, how much should we actually look at maybe guys who played well last year, maybe these regression models like I have on my website, knowing that it's literally the smallest sample size that we can get?
Yeah, I think it's maybe a little bit more instructive for some of the lower tier players. There's a bunch of guys that, T3'd last year. I mean, I might look at that a little bit more than a guy like Scotty Scheffler, for example, his finishing position, or Justin Thomas. So it's not going to be super important to me. Course history is normally pretty important to me, but this week I'm just not going to be leaning on the 1 year. I think the good news here is we have a pretty good idea of how the course is going to play. We have a good idea that, you can spray it a little bit off the tee because the rough isn't penal. Like Greg said, the approach game is going to, and like your chart shows on RickRunGood.com, the approach play is going to be really, really important. I think putting is going to be really important here, especially because, greens in regulation probably going to be pretty good because we got these big greens. But in contrast to last week, I think putting is going to weigh pretty significantly with me, and it normally doesn't. So those are the things I'm looking for way more than I'm looking for what everybody did last year.
All right, fair enough. We are going to go tier by tier, discuss as many players as possible. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
What's the mission?
We explore.
Cool.
Life is to be preserved. Worn gloriously. Because until our last moment, the future is what we make it.
And we're back. Here is the cheat sheet. Let's start in the 10K range. $10,000 or more for golfers. Scotty Scheffler, 10-9. Justin Thomas, 10-6. Dustin Johnson, 10-2. Jordan Spieth, 10,100. Greg, we'll start with you. Scotty Scheffler is making his first individual start since his Masters victory. Jordan Spieth making his first start since his RBC Heritage victory. How would we like to assess this $10,000 range?
Oh, it's such an interesting range. You have Justin Thomas, one of the best iron players in the world here. Jordan Spieth has been great approaching the green, or he's been great tee to green at least coming in. Scotty Scheffler has as well. So all three of these guys, at least, with the exception of Dustin Johnson, have done the thing that I believe is so important this week. They've done that. They check all these boxes. So again, it's one of these situations where any of these three players are fine. But I'll say, to narrow it down, I'm not sure on Scotty Scheffler at this point right now. Because it's not because of anything that he's done, but there's been, a little slowdown, a little rest, and an extremely high emotional stretch that he had. And I don't know what we're going to get from him coming in this week. I don't know if this golf course is going to give him, while he's been great tee to green, he's really been great around the green as well. Is that advantage going to be minimized at all because players can hit so many greens here? So does it just take away his ability to separate from the field? I don't think he's a bad play, but I think Spieth and Thomas, to me, are my top plays in this range. And it's because of how good they've been tee to green, how elite Justin Thomas is with iron play, and Jordan Spieth too. I mean, this area approaching the green is their strength year over year over year. It's really the thing that identifies them, and it's been really good lately. So I like those two guys.
I like that you said, I'm not sure about Scotty Scheffler. It's not because of anything he's done. Well, I hope not, Greg. He's got 4 wins in his last 7 starts. I hope it's some other wins.
Yeah, I mean, it's the hardest thing. You got to just play him until it's one of those things. Like, do you just play Scotty Scheffler until he lets you down?
You are correct when you're trying to look through this. Like, he gained over 5 strokes around the green at the match play. He gained nearly 6 at the Masters. We know about that. He was getting up and down from everywhere. I could very easily argue that if you are relying on gaining 4, 5, 6 strokes around the green this week, you are probably in trouble because everybody's just going to be having 12, 15 footers for birdie the vast majority of the week.
Right. I mean, the guy who wins this event might not have 4 shots around the green in the category. Right. How are you possibly going to gain 4 strokes around the green if you're hitting 70 greens for the week? It'll be, I say that kiddingly, but I think Scotty does so well on these really difficult golf courses because his short game is so good. And his tee to green game is good enough where he doesn't have to lean on the short game, but his short game separates him. That's what makes him world number 1 and not world number 12 or world number 8, which his tee to green game is good enough to be in that place. And that's not a problem by any means. It just, this week, I think some of his advantage might get, his ability to separate from the field will get reduced a little bit.
Here is Jordan Spieth here, Sia, because Greg is absolutely right. He's been phenomenal from tee to green. He gained 13 strokes at the RBC Heritage. He gained another 11 at the Valero Texas Open. He has now lost strokes with the putter in 5 straight. And I'm not talking about like a half a stroke. I'm talking about big time losses. I've convinced myself that this is now Jordan Spieth not even remotely close to his ceiling. Because when he starts to putt again, which I assume he's going to do, he might just run over everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those. So here's the thing, though. It comes down to ownership, in my opinion, when it comes to all 4 of these guys that we're talking about. I do think Jordan Spieth is probably going to be the 3rd most owned. I think it's going to be basically Justin Thomas and Scotty Scheffler hovering at the top, and then probably Jordan Spieth, and then probably Dustin Johnson is my guess. I think people will like Jordan Spieth because A, he's coming off a win, and B, you're right. If he's just a 0 putter, especially the way he's been hitting it on approach, and the off the tee game has been fine, obviously, but we're really looking at approach more than off the tee, I think, this week. I think he's a really interesting play. I just wonder if you're being too cute. I don't mean you, because I'm considering Jordan Spieth quite a bit as well. If we're being too cute in predicting a positive outcome with the putter, because we're going to see as we go down the board, there's a lot of guys that are just really putting well or have the capability to putt well more often than not. Clearly, Jordan is not in that stratosphere right now. So for me, I do like Jordan if his ownership percentage happens to be way lower than some of the other guys. But I agree with you on Justin Thomas. I think I like Scotty the best. And I like Dustin Johnson as an ownership leverage play. Maybe I'll add Jordan Spieth if he ends up being leveraged, but I'm not so sure he will. So long story short, I actually like Scotty Scheffler. You remove that around the green game. Just look at his ball striking. Like, just put that at a 0 and then look at his ball striking and his putting, and you're going to be really impressed with Scotty Scheffler. Take everything else away, including the wins. So the approach game is on point. The putter can spike. He's in Texas if you want to play that Texas narrative, and you guys know me. Obviously, that's a narrative I'm going to be playing to some degree. Scotty's my favorite guy, long story short. So Scotty and JT are two guys. And by the way, I've done a lineup with both of them in. You can then go down to the low 7K range and have at it. But those are the two guys I like the most.
Just pure ball striker. So this is strokes gained approach plus strokes gained off the tee. Last 50 rounds in this field. Zalatoris number 1, Justin Thomas number 2, Luke List number 3, Scotty Scheffler number 4. So you can also see the big differences, because of those 4, look at this big green square for Scotty around the green, this big green square for Scotty with the putter. Yeah, that's domination right there. When you put all that. Well,
that's the world number 1 aspect, right? The other stuff is where some of these other guys are, like 6 to 12 in the world, which is, I mean, it's still really, really good.
What do we make of Dustin Johnson at the moment, Greg? Because he is already, this is, Monday afternoon, and we've already identified that Dustin Johnson is very likely to be the lowest owned of the guys over $10,000. Now, we'll see as the week goes on how much lower owned, but like, what scenario would allow you to feel comfortable playing Dustin Johnson this week?
A really low ownership. I mean, look, there's, again, you just, the thing that you're going on with Dustin is, well, what has he been working on in this time away? He got married, right? Has he been working on anything? Does that matter? The questions around DJ and his game, he's so, in a way, hard to predict when he's coming off a layoff. I know Jordan Spieth, I'm very confident Jordan Spieth has been working on the putting. You listen to what he said during and after the RBC Heritage, and it was clear that he's checking the stats. He's looking at the same things we are. He knows that he needs to really work on his putting. And I expect him to continue that effort, the work in that direction. My hope is that pays off. But that's still an unknown. With Dustin, I don't have any sense of, an increased effort in any area. That being said, he's been great. He's been great approaching the green. He's been great off the tee. Maybe not by DJ standards, but he's been very good off the tee. So there's not a lot of reason to not like DJ. It's just, what has he been doing in this time since the RBC Heritage and now, other than getting married? Has he put himself back into a heavy practice environment? Or is he going to pop off and win? And that's why he's so hard to predict, because he has the ability to just go and win this tournament. But I think those questions are hard to answer.
Let's continue down to the 9K range here, because I think this is where things start to get really exciting. Hideki Matsuyama, 9,900, Xander Schauffele, 97, Sam Burns, 95. The bottom of the range is Will Zalatoris at 9,400, Joaquin Niemann at 9,300, Brooks Koepka is 9.2, and then Tommy Fleetwood is a flat 9,000. Before we get to that, Sia, Baracho Burrow in the chat says, I think I know who Rick's going to pick in the one and done. I don't even know who Rick's going to pick in the one. How could he know? I have no idea. Is this a mind reading situation? I have not even considered this week's one and done for 1 second yet.
Yeah. Funny story from last week. I hadn't either until the picks were due. And I texted, Greg was on this chat. I texted Jacob and said, give me Keegan. And then literally, I'm not joking, it might have been 30 seconds later, like right in the nick of time, I'm like, you know what? If it's not too late, Jacob, Go ahead and give me Sepp Straka. So that should tell you how my one and done is going this year.
That was painful.
It was
painful to. I mean, it's one thing in the moment, and I liked Straka going in too, but then to see it unfold and to see Keegan play the way he did on Friday, it was brutal to watch. I felt for you, Sia.
Trust your initial instincts. That's the lesson.
It only costs you like $600,000. You can make that up.
Yeah.
You can make that up this week. All right, Sia, you get first crack at this because we feel sorry for you. Let's find some good plays here in the $9,000 range.
All right, so there's a few guys I have my eye on. I'm not going to go in order of price, though. I'm going to start with Sam Burns, who is absolutely a guy who checks all the boxes, especially if you're looking at, well, first of all, if you're looking at any scoring metrics from like a DK point scoring or strokes gained, par 5, things of that nature, he'll check those boxes for sure. But if you're just looking at approach and putting, which I think, we should have a big emphasis on. Look how he spikes. Like, forget about the Valspar where he gained 7 on approach and over 5 with the putter. You might see that like in a vacuum and say, oh, well, that was just a crazy great spike event for him. But then you just go to some of the other tournaments right near that, the API, where he's gaining almost 4 on approach and over 5 with the putter. Like, this is something that Sam Burns consistently does. I think he's going to be pretty chalky, but I do like Sam Burns. I think, it's not like I'm going to be lock buttoning him because I think he's going to have a lot of ownership, but I do like Sam Burns probably the best. The other two that I like, I'll go in order here in terms of who I like. It's Hideki Matsuyama at 9,900. I don't think a lot of people are going to want to play him. And I'll admit, I think we need to monitor to some degree or to the extent that we can his neck injury. I think he's fine. He came off his last tournament where he played just fine, but it's a neck. It's something to monitor, but I don't think a lot of people are going to roster him. I think they're going to go up, pay up for a 10K guy, or they're going to go down to somebody like Sam Burns or Joaquin Niemann or Will Zalatoris. So Decky, I think, gets squeezed out from an ownership standpoint. But again, if you're looking at approach numbers and you're looking at the putter, Hideki makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So I've got, let's call it 6 different metrics here on the cheat sheet. The 4 different strokes gained categories: driving distance gained, fairways gained. And there are very few golfers on the time frame that I have, which is 25 rounds right now, that are positive in all of them. Hideki's one of them. Xander is another one, but it is a very short list as you go through this field of guys that check off every single box. And Greg, 2022, I know he's been battling injury. It's been great for Hideki. He's been awesome. Like, if this is going to be an approach play contest and with his gains with the putter, if you're willing to stomach it, I think Hideki's a great option.
I think so too. Last year didn't go great, and he was coming in on great form. He would have checked the box that I mentioned earlier. It didn't go well for him. He didn't putt very well. I mean, his short game really let him down, which is unique. Last year he lost like over 4 strokes around the green, which was kind of disappointing. But I think that Hideki is a very interesting play, especially when ownership goes way down, because it has been a great year. He's won twice. It's been, I believe so.
He won twice this season. He won his last start of 2021 at the Zozo, and then he won the Sony. So he won twice in 3 starts.
Right. So it's been fantastic for him. And he did come back and play the Masters. He's had a lot of time off since. He's one of those guys that I trust is working on whatever he needs to work on, whether it's his physical, his neck injury, which seemed fine at the Masters. So whether he's been working on that, rehabbing that, working on his game, I don't think Hideki's been, lounging around by any means. So he's extremely attractive, and Xander and Burns are as well. I really like that. I mean, this range is a place I feel you could almost start your lineup. Will Zalatoris has been awesome this year. Absolutely awesome. And he might be my favorite play in this range. If you take the match play out of it, the only event he's lost strokes approach the green is the Masters, where he came in 6th. So I don't think that's a sign of struggling iron play. The Masters, the numbers from the Masters you have to take them with a grain of salt to a degree, because the strategy is so different at that golf course than most. It tends to be less aggressive, and sometimes a great shot won't gain you the same amount of strokes that a great shot will here. at this event. So I look at Will Zalatoris, and I think this is great form coming in. And I'm very curious to see if these putting changes we saw at the match play that carried over into the Masters, if that will continue. And if it does, this is one of the more dangerous players in the field, and he's only 9,400. So, I mean, Will Zalatoris to me is a definite play for me. And I feel I probably lean his way over Burns, because I think Burns is going to attract, and rightly so, a ton of that ownership.
Yeah, and I think Zalatoris will as well, and it's well-deserved, Sia. I mean, he's got everything going for him. The 5th at the match play, which means he lost in the Elite 8. The 6th at the Masters. The 4th at Zurich with Davis Riley as his partner. But Joaquin Niemann, if you just blanked out their names, like, they've been very, very similar in this last 25 rounds. I mean, they've been very similar on off the tee, very similar on approach. Niemann's been better around the green. Zalatoris, believe it or not, has been a little bit better with the putter. Niemann is a little bit longer off the tee and a little bit less accurate, but it's relatively close here between two of these guys.
I agree. And I agree also that Burns and Zalatoris will both be sort of highly owned. I think Niemann is an interesting pivot. I don't think he'll be drastically lower than those two guys. I think he'll pick up some popularity as the week goes. But I think Niemann's interesting. The thing about Niemann, and you could say the same about Zalatoris, the thing that makes me nervous is the putter. The good news for Niemann is lately when he's been losing with the putter, and he has, it's not a travesty. He's losing around a stroke or a stroke and a half or, 0.7 or something like that. Outside of that, he grades out so well. Strokes gained par 5, DraftKings points, birdie or better gained. He really checks all, approach last 36 rounds. He's 15th. So he's checking all the boxes. The putter scares me a little bit, but we see here, if you're watching on YouTube, he did gain with the putter at the RBC Heritage, and he's no stranger to gaining with the putter, as he did at the Honda Classic as well, or the Genesis Invitational, which he won. So I think Niemann is an excellent pivot off of Will Zalatoris. If it ends up being an ownership pivot, I'm not really sure what the difference is going to be between the two.
That 101 that you see next to his name for the Zurich Classic, that was a withdrawal, but that was Mito Pereira, his partner. I think he cited a back injury is why that Chilean team withdrew. So I certainly wouldn't hold that against Joaquin Niemann. Anybody else in the 9K range here, gentlemen? We haven't talked about Brooks Koepka. I haven't talked about Tommy Fleetwood. We glossed over Xander Schauffele. Anything we need to cover there, or should I just keep bopping?
Go ahead, Greg.
Well, I think these guys down here with Koepka, I put in the same category as DJ, where I don't know. And it kind of bothers me, because we've seen this guy come out at when this was at Trinity Forest, he came in 4th and is striping it, and that led into the PGA at Bethpage, where he was awesome. But we haven't seen him since the Masters. He missed the cut. Where is Brooks Koepka with his game? I don't know. And in this range, it's really hard for me to go that way. Tommy Fleetwood has also been very good coming in. I don't have the trust. I think there are some guys in the high 8K range I'd rather pay down for away from Fleetwood. And then there's the top end. And I really think anybody from Hideki to Joaquin, I'm a little more, I'd say Hideki down to Zalatoris that I'd really like to play. I'd rather pay up for them and pay down into the high 8s than Koepka and Fleetwood.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing on Brooks. You don't know what you're getting. I think the upside, though, or the upshot for Brooks Koepka is the upside at 9,200. So I think that's something to consider in your GPP lineups. He obviously, if he can put the approach and the putter game together, which he hasn't really done lately, usually he's spiking with the putter or with some bad approach or vice versa. But if he can put it together, which I think we know he can, this is a, quote, tune-up, I guess you could say, for the major next week. So he might be in good form. And if he is at 9,200, he's definitely a value. And he's probably going to be a really nice pivot off of, let's see, Niemann, Zalatoris, Burns, a lot of the guys that are going to gather up a lot of ownership.
Yeah, the good news, I guess, for Brooks, or the best news, is that he's gained at least 3.5 strokes from tee to green in 5 of his last 7. One that he lost was the horrendous, horrible side of the draw at TPC Sawgrass. So, I mean, it's not, it feels close for Brooks. I don't know if he's going to figure it out, but like, it definitely feels close.
Well, that's a really good point, though, when it comes to the players and being on a bad wave. Take that out, and he's really outside of the Masters. He gained pretty significantly on approach. Let's see, 3 tournaments in a row. I mean, the game might be rounding into form, and we see the putter, it can spike.
Certainly can. Let's continue our quest for value, the $8,000 range, the 7s and the 6s. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. $8,000 range here, gentlemen. Small, $8,700. Adam Scott, Taylor Gooch, 86, Johnny Vegas, 84, Jason Kokrak, 83, Jason Day is 8,200. Then you get Wise, Hadwin, and Champ, 3 first cut regulars down at the bottom of this range. Greg, you get to kick us off here. How would you like to allocate your money here?
Oh man, Taylor Gooch is hard to look away from in this case, right? I mean, he's got to be my favorite play in this range, with maybe one exception, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Taylor Gooch has been hitting the ball really nicely all year. The driver may be a little bit of an issue. You see a lot of red there if you're watching on YouTube in that off the tee column, and that is not really a concern for me this week. I don't expect to see rough the way we did last week, really penal areas for errancy off the tee. I think his iron play is going to have a chance to shine. And I really like what he's done with the putter. He's gained in 3 of his last 4, 5 of his last 7. So it's been quite good on the greens for Taylor Gooch. And he's going to, he's an Oklahoma guy. He's going back to the Midwest, down to the Dallas area. It's near home for him. And I think the PGA at Southern Hills is one he's had circled on the calendar for a while. And I think he's really inspired to put together a great week this week.
You want to talk about a little extra motivation? Friend Max Homa and Zurich Classic partner just got another one in the win column last week. Gooch has got to be licking his chops to get out here and start playing some golf this week.
Yeah, and he knows he can compete with a Max Homa, right? You know where your game stands compared to him. So, and I know Taylor Gooch. I've heard him say it before. He wants to be the number 1 player in the world, and whether you think that's a little too lofty for him or not, it doesn't matter to me. It means he's got a lot of belief in his game, and I think he's going to come into this week inspired.
All right, Greg, hold on to that other guy for just 1 second. Sia, the $8,000 range has a couple of savvy vets in Jason Day and Johnny Vegas. Adam Scott, I guess you could throw into that category as well. Who do you like most here?
Well, I like Taylor Gooch. There's 2 other guys I like, and the second one is the guy Greg's going to bring up. So I'm going to save that for him. Okay. It's super obvious. And I like that guy quite a bit too. Johnny Vegas,
super obvious.
It's super obvious. Johnny Vegas, I do like at 8,400. I'm in this sort of crossroads with Johnny Vegas where I'm not sure how good he is relative to how well he rates out in the models. Like we see that, right? Every year there's a couple of guys, like last year, it was like Charlie Hoffman and Keegan Bradley were always number 1 in everybody's models because they were just so good at pretty much every phase of the game, particularly in the ball striking department. Here, Johnny Vegas is really good in the ball striking department. He's coming off that arm surgery that he had, but he looked great last week. And the trouble that Johnny Vegas always has, or typically has, is the around the green game, which won't be a problem for him here because he shouldn't have to really exercise that part of his game. So I think this is a really good course setup. He was, I think, a T9 here last year. So Johnny Vegas, Taylor Gooch, and the guy that Greg is about to talk about are probably my 3 favorite in this 8K range.
Johnny Vegas had the arm surgery and then gained 10 strokes on approach last week, his best total of his career. Maybe he just needed some rest. Maybe he just needed a couple weeks off, Greg. Maybe that was the secret recipe.
No, Rick, I think he had this surgery the baseball players are going to have a couple of years from now.
They gave him bionic hands and arms.
I mean, I don't really know what to make of that. I see that, and it's going to really inflate any of your models. Where you gained 10 strokes approaching the green in one event. It's insane. There's a lot to like about Johnny other than that, but I just wonder if that's a peak. Is that anomaly is it too good to be true? And it's almost like I don't pick guys who won last week or the defending champions. It's almost like, well, it can't happen again. I don't know. Maybe he did have that surgery.
Have, implanted homing devices that keep you on plane as you swing through. There's
exactly.
there's no other excuse for it. All right, let's reveal the second guy, Greg. Who is it?
Yep. Oh, one other thing on Vegas. He hit like 61 greens last year here. So he it was just I saw that number and I just started laughing. It's crazy. But anyway, you know who it is, Adam Hadwin. He has been awesome this year approaching the green. It's only been this calendar year he's lost strokes in one event at the Genesis approaching the green. That's the only one. And I look at his game and his performance. A little disappointing to see him in Svensson. I believe it was Svensson missed the cut at the Zurich.
Yep.
But I don't necessarily hold him accountable for that. I think he's in great form. You see the Max Homa, a guy in the Mark Blackburn camp as well, getting a win. And I think that has to do great things for Adam Hadwin too. He's going to start believing he can go and he can win. And he is Adam Hadwin to me is such an obvious play. My only hope is that the rest of the DFS community doesn't think the same thing.
Well, I don't know actually what they're going to think. This is by far the best approach season of Adam Hadwin's career. And really those changes started to take place at the new year, Greg, not the new season. So that should even show you that, like, it's even better than that. It's even better than like the year by year thing that I'm showing you right now, because it's since the calendar turn, he's been freaking unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, it's been 3, 4, and it also isn't like the Johnny Vegas peak where you have this crazy outlier for one. It's been consistent, steady, nearly a stroke around for the entire year. And that's a really good sign. It takes that floor, it raises the floor really high on a golf course like this. It's going to ask for great approach play. So he's just a no-brainer to me.
Anybody else in the 8K range? Cam Champ on a golf course that shouldn't be all that penal off the tee. Anyone? No.
Probably.
What about Aaron? What about Aaron Wise? I know he's a fan favorite. He checks a lot of the boxes. Are we?
Yeah, I feel the same way about Aaron Wise as I did 6 months ago. It's just like he's gonna hit it great from tee to green. Hopefully he putts well enough, and maybe he'll finish inside the top. I mean, he played well in Mexico, played well at the RBC Heritage. He's won this event before, obviously not at this golf course. But my opinion has generally not changed on Aaron Wise for 6 months.
Yeah, my thought on him is I do like him, but I'm trying to lean as much as I can on guys that are more consistent putters, or at least can flash a little bit more than Aaron Wise can with the putter. So he's probably on the outside looking in for me.
All right, so you start us in the 7K range here. I'm not going to read everybody, but Noren, Power, Leishman, McNeely, Siwoo Kim at the top, Scott Stallings, friend of the pod, Patrick Rogers, Nick Taylor, Lee Westwood down at the bottom. How are you best allocating your salary cap here?
There's so much to like here, and it starts at the top with Alex Noren. He checks every box that I'm trying to check. So ball striking, obviously, but specifically on approach. He's top 30. I'm looking at last 50 rounds or so. Top 30 strokes gained par 5, DK points, birdie or better gained. Pretty underwhelming at the RBC, but generally has been really a top 25 machine, top 10 earlier in the year, WM Phoenix Open and a couple of others. I think Alex Noren, if you just look at the approach and the way he can spike with the putter, and he does that fairly consistently, I think this is such a good course setup for him.
Noren, 5th on approach in the last 24 rounds of all golfers in the 7K range. He's gaining off the tee. He's getting around the green. He's gaining with the putter. He finished 21st here last year. You can see why this is all adding up for Sia. Greg, 7K range is yours.
Okay, a couple guys that I like here. I'm with you on Noren. I think he's just a great play. I'm not sure how he's going to pair with Adam Hadwin, who's a lock in my lineup. So I don't know how much he'll get in, but he's a great play. Some of the other guys really standing out to me. Siwoo Kim stands out to me. He's been just phenomenal lately. Tee to green, especially. We'll see what happens on the greens for him this week, but he definitely stands out. Lanto Griffin, again, he had a great week last week, and I think in large part because it leaned heavily on ball striking, and you had that rough around the greens. You had this situation where his weakness, which you could see there, the around the green play, wasn't exposed. And I think this week we're in that same situation where he does everything really well except one thing, and it's like the least important aspect this week. You could go hit 55 greens, and your short game's not really exposed all that much. So I think Lanto's a great play.
You know what I like about Lanto, and there's a couple other guys that fit this as well, Greg, is top 15, T15 in Mexico, T6 at TPC Potomac. Two very different golf courses, right? Asking you to do different things, and you lean in, you gain 4 strokes off the tee in both of them. You gain 3.5 and 5.5 on approach. You stink around the green, but that's fine because we don't care about that. And then you're a 0 putter. Like that's like, it's a really good recipe. You give me that this week, I'm super thrilled.
Yeah, and he's a good putter in general. Had a couple of bad weeks. You can see there at the Valero Texas Open and the Valspar. And again, Valero can have some tricky greens. They were a little slow this year, and Valspar is a very specific green type as well. So I think in general he's a good enough putter to contend. I really like him. And then going down a little bit lower, Sebastian Munoz, another guy by the way, who just looks really, really good. Tee to green especially. But I wanted to get down into the 7,300 range and talk about CT Pan, who I think I'll be going back to as well. Last week he played great, tied 15th, did exactly what we expected him to do, and he's gained in every single event approaching the green since the Honda Classic. So he's been on really nice form. Hasn't hit a heater yet, but this looks like a profile of a guy who's ready to win a golf tournament. I think CT Pan's a great fit here.
There you go. CT Pan, $7,300, 15th last week, 29th the week before in Mexico. See, I'll bounce it back to you. Who else in this $7,000 range is worth investing in?
So there's a couple guys that are really interesting that I don't know if I'm going to play, and a few guys that I'm definitely going to play. Let me just note, I think it's a pretty good time to go back to Sepp Straka, who missed the cut by 1 stroke, thanks to a couple of crazy things that happened at the end of day 2. I think Mito Pereira is interesting. I think we need to monitor his situation because he did, like you said, withdraw from the Zurich. Keith Mitchell, another miscut guy. If you're going for team jilted narrative, then as in jilted you because of your lineups, I think Keith Mitchell and Sepp Straka fit squarely right there. I think they could be fine out here. Here are the guys that I'm playing though. JJ Spawn at 7,200. I'm not 100% sure he's priced appropriately. I think it's a fair price, but honestly, I think you could put him at 7,500 at this point, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. The ball striking has been great. The putter can go south, but it can also spike. Patton Kizzire, who had a good finish here last year, it's sort of a perfect course setup for him. He's a birdie maker. He can get it dialed in on approach and with the putter. And the other guy that's kind of sneaky for me, he's made 5 cuts in a row, all the while doing like big things with the approach game and with the putter. He's one of 2 members of the Wu-Tang Clan, and it's Brandon Wu at 7,000. I think that's tremendous value there.
The Wu-Tang Clan. Got it. Yes. Okay. $7,000. I'm a little bit surprised we didn't mention Kurt Kitayama, who second to Johnny Vegas in strokes gained approach last week. Look at tee to green numbers. Second to only Cam Young last week. Has a couple of top 10s here in his last handful of starts, Greg. This is feeling like a guy who's feeling himself.
Yeah, I looked at him as well. And he also had the Honda Classic. He gained 7. I mean, he is spiked approaching the green, which is great. I just wonder, and it's such a, I hate making this argument, but it's just one of those feel things. Like, is that going to happen again? And it's rare to see these spike weeks. And so I don't know. I mean, I really like the guy. I'm really impressed with the golf swing. It's clear that he's getting more comfortable. But there's so much. There's so many really good weeks. I just wonder if that's going to continue. And that's probably unfair. It very well may be a bad argument. And he's a great play by all means. It worries. I wonder if it's real or if it's repeatable again the very next week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, It does. And we're going to find out. because on Sunday we're gonna see if what version of Kurt Kitayama that we got this week. It'll be fun. $6,000 range here, gents. We've got to get to the real value on the board. Danny Willett, Grayson Sig up top, goes all the way down. Oh boy, Jonas Blixt back in the field. Jason Duffner min priced. Bill Haas, that's not deserving. He's made like 7 of his last 8 cuts. That's a little messed up.
Yeah, that's low.
Justin Leonard is making his first start on tour, Greg. I can't remember, but it's been a while. But he turns 50, I think, in like 2 months, and he is gearing up. When we start making Champions Tour lineups or we start making Champions Tour bets, Justin Leonard is about to go ham.
Well, what do you think his ownership's going to be this week? That's the real deciding factor for me.
0%.
I think so too. I'm not going to make it 1. I'm not, or 0.1, whatever. I'm not going there. I don't think you have to. I think there are some really good options in this 6K range. Up at the top, there are 2 guys at 6,900. I think are very playable. Martin Laird has been great approaching the green. Last weekend the weather didn't go as well as I would have liked or thought. Putting has been a concern, and that's why he's 6,900. Another guy where putting is typically not a concern. It's been quiet so far this year, but Wyndham Clark is a really volatile kind of player, and I'm wondering if he's starting to find something with his iron play. He's gained in his last 2. He was 10th at the Zurich Classic, although I think Cameron Tringale really carried that team. But he has a kind of volatility that could be a sneaky play this week. So I like those 2 guys way up at the top. There's another guy down a little lower at 6,700 who I like, in Hudson Swafford, who has been hitting the ball really nicely all year long. I mean, really, after his win, there was a little bit of a letdown, but it's been really good, and it seems like he's getting back into form. And he putted really well last week, which I think is a good sign. And there's a kind of a fantasy go-to 6K guy in Smotherman, who's there for a reason. So I like all those guys in this range.
Yeah, Smotherman only behind Luke Donald in strokes gained approach in the last 24 rounds, although I think Donald hold out a couple of times at TPC Potomac. That might be helping those numbers. Smotherman has another top 25, so that was nice to go back to. Put a bow on Justin Leonard. He hasn't played on tour since the 2017 Valero Texas Open. He turns 50 next month. So just getting those reps in, which, okay. I don't want to get on my soapbox here, Greg, because Justin Leonard deserves to play every PGA Tour event that he wants, but he should not be in this field. He should not be taking a spot from somebody so that he can gear up for the Champions Tour.
You hear that, Justin Leonard?
I don't want to make you get on the spot, Greg, and like take a stance on this, but like if you have not competed for 5 years and you are deserving, I get it. There are a lot of places that you can play for the next 4 weeks that are not.
So we had a similar situation with Vijay Singh when he signed up for that Corn Ferry Tour event at Sawgrass, and he just got obliterated, ripped for it. Yeah. I think on the PGA Tour it's a different circumstance. They have very distinctive qualifications aside from sponsor exemptions. Now, if there's a sponsor exemption that you take you take offense to, if Tony Romo gets a sponsor exemption, I'm completely with you. But if you qualify on a past champions exemption, a career money exemption, I can't hold you against that. I think that's fair. Right? It's written into the rules. It's deserving, and I'll allow it.
I think it is fair and deserving. I just don't like it.
Well, I am now rostering Justin Leonard because of the bulletin board material that you clearly just gave
it. If that gets to Justin Leonard, I'll bet $100 on him and for bulletin. I can't imagine that ever gets to him.
And I am rostering him on the same team as Adam Svensson because Greg earlier basically just blamed the Zurich loss.
Did. He said I wouldn't blame Hadwin on Hadwin
directly on Adam Svensson. Directly.
Yeah, it was his fault. I love Svensson. Been a huge fan of his this year.
I thought he was going to back down.
The Zurich was a down week for him.
Oh boy. 6K range, see it. What do you got?
Okay, so there's a couple guys I really like that Greg mentioned, namely Hudson Swafford and Austin Smotherman. So I don't think we need to go over those, but I will point out that Smotherman's gained ball striking. These are PGA events, by the way. Gained ball striking 7 tournaments in a row and gained significantly on approach all 7 of those tournaments. His weakness is the around the green game. He almost always loses around the green, in some cases very significantly. Basically a 0 putter as of late. If anything, he gains. So this really is a perfect setup for him. Hudson Swafford for the same reasons that Greg mentioned. 2 other guys that I don't think Greg mentioned. Doc Redman, I think it's a good setup for him. I think it's a pretty good course fit. Good on approach, good putting last 24 rounds. I'll mention Peter Malnati. A guy just never gets any respect. He's like the Rodney Dangerfield of the PGA Tour, but he has made 4 out of the last 5 cuts. He has relied on the short game a little bit, but he can spike in the approach department. He's risky. I mean, he's one of those guys I'd almost put, as far as the 6K range is concerned, I'd almost put him in the Kurt Kitayama of the 7K range in terms of these are guys that can go out and maybe win you a GPP because nobody's really going to play him that much, and they're certainly valuable options. So very risky, but I think it's a guy I might put in a lineup or 2.
Steven Yeager is that guy for me this week. Ever since he needed something to change, got to play the Zurich with Damon. They made the cut, and he's been great since. So I think Steven Yeager might be able to keep it rolling here.
Hey, Rick, one of your favorites, Paul Barjon.
Oh, Paul
he was looking so good last week. Made the cut for us. I don't know. I played some of Paul Barjon last week, and it was great at first, and it slid over the weekend for him.
He is. I mean, there's so much to love. I mean, when you gain 3.5 off the tee, 2.5 on approach, and then give away nearly 5 around the green and another 2 on the putting surfaces. Oh boy, you are firmly in my favorite team no putt category, but it's ugly. It's ugly. Ever since he had
6,300.
He had that taste of glory at the American Express. Remember, he was winning that Saturday or Sunday. Well, I don't know when it was. Saturday maybe. And I was like, holy crap. If he wins this, like everybody in like the Run Good community's got like a $5 500 to 1 ticket on this guy. Couldn't pull it off. Anybody else? No, going once, going twice. Sold on the 6K range. We still have a couple things left to do because Sia, I know you've been hard at work with the Twitter community to come up with some of the best narrative lineups as possible. Now, hold on. Did we check to see what last week's lineup would have done?
I did not. It certainly
have. Do we have it somewhere or no?
It was good for a while. Right. The banker
keep in mind,
one was great.
Jason Day Trader was in that. Matthew Wolf of Wall Street was in that. And they, up until, up until Saturday, that was great. And Wolf was pretty good the whole way. So those were the guys that you kind of wanted to leave off the list. They ended up being really good. I think Seamus Power Broker, he missed the cut, right?
Oh, Seamus Power Broker. I couldn't remember the other ones. Okay. All right. What do we got for this week?
Well, okay, so we have a few here. So I think this is 2 of 4 that we might end up showing. We got a ton of submissions. So for those of you that didn't get up here, keep coming them in the next weeks. I think.
Oh, people are tweeting these at you, Sia.
They are Well, yeah, I'm actually putting out a tweet around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning on Monday and saying, hey, let's take some submissions. And I got like at least 10 or 12 tweets today. All of them really, really good. Here's a few of them here.
Okay, so we've got the Model Maniac who went, because it's an AT&T event. Oh, that's right. This is good.
Yeah.
All right, so AT&T, obviously mobile phone provider. Luke contacts list. Love it already.
Solid.
Grayson Poor Signal. Maxed data limit McGreevy. Not your best Model Maniac, but that's okay. Dylan, who am I speaking to? ? That's pretty good. Volume lower Justin. That's not great. And Jason Coke racked screen. That one's really good. So I assume that would be, those guys have got to all be under 50K. It's probably like a $43,000 lineup right there.
Oh, yeah. And you could sub in some of those other ones. Seamus Low Power, Bo Phone Holster, Francisco Molinari, and Hey, Den Buckley. I don't really know what to do with
Yeah,
that one, but
I thought the same thing.
we can change out Dylan for Brandon. Maybe put in Seamus low power and maybe Bo Hostler in there, Bo Phone Holster in there.
What is happening on the right here? What happens when you get to the Byron Nelson at TPC Craig Ranch? Sounds like the AT&T Craig T. Nelson.
Okay,
I
so
don't understand what's happening here.
That's because you are of an age that you don't get the reference. There was a famous show called Coach, and on that show was a famous actor who headlined it, and Hayden Fox was the name of that actor on the show. Craig T. Nelson is the name of the actual actor, so he went with a coaching theme here.
Okay, yeah, this is way over my head. So what? These are famous coaches.
That's
okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Scotty Bowman Scheffler. Scotty Bowman, he was the coach of the Red Wings, I believe. Herb Brooks Koepka.
Yep.
I think Herb Brooks was the coach of the Miracle on Ice
1980.
team.
Yeah,
there we
absolutely.
go. Sir Alex Ferguson Norin. I can't remember that one. But that's definitely a coach somewhere. Davis Pat Riley, of course. Coach K. H. Lee is interesting. And then we get Hayden Buckley again. Hayden Fox Buckley. Manchester United.
Manchester United is Sir Alex Ferguson. Yeah.
Okay.
Hayden Buckley finding himself in a couple of these.
It's fake.
Are there more? Are there more, Jacob? Okay, we've got more.
A couple more.
Sounds like a dealership.
This is good. Dallas, like Texas.
Oh, got it. Nick Taylor Ford. Pat and Kazire Dodge of Dallas. Seamus Power Harley Davidson. Hostler Chevrolet.
That's got to be a real thing.
Davis Riley Mazda, Johnny Vegas, his used car. That's pretty funny. And then John Markowski, who's our reigning and defending champion of this. Athletes who played in the state of Texas. DJ J. Watt. So JJ Watt, DJ J. Watt. Jeff Bagg, Will Zalatoris. Love everything about that.
That's great.
Luke List. Nolan Ryan Palmer.
Awesome one.
John Hakeem Olajuwon. That's the best one.
Yes.
Ryan Bremmett Smith.
He wins again, right?
Yeah, it's really good.
It's really good. John's
there are some good effort. There are some good efforts on the other ones, but I mean, I don't know if anybody could beat John Markowski right now.
This is a different side of the brain. Like to be able to come up with this stuff. And like, I'm not good at this at all. John Markowski, if there was a profession, he should be making money off of this somehow. Like there's got to be some skill and like some profession that he could put this to good use. It's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know if there's like a database you could create on your site, Rick, which is like narrative. Strokes gain narrative.
So have you ever seen baseballreference.com? And I'm sure they do it for the other sports too, but they have like everybody's nickname. So they'll have like, I don't know. They'll have nicknames for every player. And I could enlist John to come up with a nickname or all the puns for every single player and list them on their golfer profile page.
Wow.
Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. What do I do with this?
For the record, there was even more obscure narrative. There was a Willie Nelson narrative for some reason. There was a long names narrative. We can't put them up all on here, but next Monday, I'm expecting all of you and then some to submit some more.
Well, next Monday is a big one. A lot of PGA championship. I mean, I don't even want to, you could just go in a bunch of different directions. I'm looking forward to that. Sia, have you considered any first round leaders for us this week?
I have. Texas Wind is potentially in play. So this might change. Usually there's one or two I take off because of, a bad tee time, if you will. But I'll give you a 5 right now. This is a tentative one. Sam Burns at 40-1, Alex Noren 55-1, JJ Spawn 80-1, Matthew Wolff, who we didn't talk a ton about, 90-1. I don't think he's good for 4 rounds, but he's honestly, when he's been good in the first round as of late. So I know that's few and far between that he's actually been good, but the first round he can flash. That's 90-1. And then I'll go back to Brandon Wu at 110-1. So Burns, Noren, Spawn, Wolff, Brandon Wu.
There you go. 5 first round leaders, all 40-1 or longer. We've got our narrative lineups. We've gone tier by tier. I think we've covered it all, gentlemen. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Looking forward to the tune-up, if you will, but I don't think this is much of a tune-up, as it turns out. I think this is going to be a very competitive 4 days with a lot of guys at the top battling and a few guys that sneak in from the 7 and 8K range.
Looking forward to it. Okay, producer Jacob does all the hard work behind the scenes. Sia Nejad, available on Twitter at Sia Nejad. That's Greg DuCharme right there. You can find him on Twitter at @TheRealGFD, and you can find me at RickRunGood. This has been The First Cut, and we'll catch you next time.